Flight attendant refuses to let a black family board in. They make one call, and flight stops. What happens when a family holding valid first-class tickets is told people like you don't belong? You'll be stunned to discover how one phone call stopped the entire flight, uncovering a shocking conspiracy that went far beyond racist gatekeeping and put everyone's safety at risk. Like, subscribe, and listen to the full story to hear how they fought back and expose the unbelievable truth. I'm sorry, these seats are not assigned to you. The words sliced through the bustling noise of Gate C-27 at Dallas-Fort Worth International, sharp and cool despite the professionally pinned blonde hair and neatly pressed Skylux Airlines uniform. Sarah Coleman, the lead flight attendant, stood blocking the jet bridge entrance, arms crossed, a smile fixed on her face that didn't reach her narrowed blue eyes. Before her stood Michael Harris, his wife Nina, and their daughter Jada, holding first-class boarding passes for Flight 247 to San Francisco. "There must be a mistake," Michael said, his voice calm, holding up his pass, ticket stock crisp under the fluorescent lights. "We're confirmed for 1A, 1B, and 1C. Sarah didn't glance at the proffered ticket. Her gaze swept over them Michael's tailored gray travel suit, Nina's elegant navy dress, Jada's neat cornrows and university hoodie. "The manifest shows these seats are reserved. You'll need to wait with the general boarding group. We'll see what's available in economy." A prickle of unease went through Michael. "This fell off. Could you please check your system again? We booked these months ago." Sarah's smile tightened, becoming a brittle line. "Our system is accurate. First class is fully booked with our priority passengers." The emphasis was slight but unmistakable. She took a half step back, positioning herself more firmly as a barrier. "Now please step aside. You're holding up the boarding process." Around them, other passengers, mostly white, shuffled impatiently, some casting curious, others annoyed glances. Nina placed a gentle hand on Michael's arm. Jada shifted her weight, clutching her carry-on, her initial excitement visibly dimming. "Ma'am," Michael persisted, keeping his voice level despite the heat rising in his chest. "We are ticketed first-class passengers. Please scan the tickets or call a gate agent supervisor." Sarah's composure finally cracked. The smile vanished, replaced by a glare. "I'm a supervisor on this flight. I know who belongs in first class and who doesn't. People like you always try to push your way in. Now move before I call security." The words were spoken just low enough not to carry across the entire waiting area, but loud enough for the Harises and those closest in line to hear clearly. The implication hung heavy and ugly in the air. Jada flinched. Michael felt Nina's grip tighten on his arm. The confrontation had abruptly shifted from inconvenient to deeply personal and hostile. Security? For holding valid tickets? The situation felt suddenly, dangerously unstable. Michael Harris wasn't accustomed to being told he didn't belong. At 42, he helmed Harris Investments, a multi-billion-dollar private equity firm he'd built from the ground up through shrewd analysis, relentless drive, and an uncanny ability to see value where others saw only risk. His world revolved around calculated decisions, high-stakes negotiations, and the quiet satisfaction of proving doubters wrong, something he'd done repeatedly since his early days as one of the few black faces in highly competitive MBA programs and later on Wall Street. His office, overlooking the Dallas skyline, was a testament to his success. Minimalist design, cutting-edge technology, and a palpable aura of focused energy. He demanded excellence from his team and even more from himself. He was a man who understood systems, leverage, and the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, currents of power. This understanding extended to his investments, including a significant multi-million-dollar stake in Skylux Airlines. He'd bought in during a downturn, seeing potential in their route network and believing, perhaps optimistically, in their stated commitment to modernization and improved customer service. He'd attended shareholder meetings, read quarterly reports, even had occasional high-level briefings. He knew the airline's inner workings better than most passengers, viewing it not just as a carrier, but as a complex financial entity. His demanding professional life was balanced by his family. Nina, 40, a former architect who now managed the family's philanthropic foundation, was his anchor. Where Michael was analytical and reserved, Nina was warm, intuitive, and possessed a quiet strength that could turn fierce when protecting her loved ones. Their Dallas home, comfortable rather than ostentatious, was filled with art, books, and the easy laughter of a family unit built on mutual respect and deep affection. They navigated their affluent world with awareness, never forgetting the biases they often encountered, sometimes subtly, sometimes overtly. They taught their daughter, Jada, to be proud, observant, and resilient. Jada, at 14, was bright and increasingly aware of the world's complexities. She was passionate about coding, robotics club, and possessed a sharp sense of justice inherited from both parents. She'd seen the way people sometimes looked at her family, the surprise in certain restaurants, the extra scrutiny in high-end stores, the assumptions made based purely on skin color. Her parents had equipped her with strategies: stay calm, document if necessary, know your rights. But the lessons were often abstract until they became painfully real. The trip to San Francisco was meant to be a blend of business and pleasure. Michael had board meetings for a tech company Harris Investments was funding. Afterwards, they planned a long weekend exploring the city, visiting Alcatraz, riding cable cars, and needed break before Jada started her demanding sophomore year of high school. Flying first class wasn't an extravagance Michael indulged in carelessly, but for this longer flight, juggling work calls and family time, the space and convenience seemed practical. He'd used miles accumulated over years of business travel, securing their seats far in advance. He'd even confirmed the reservation just the week before. Everything was meticulously planned, typical of how Michael approached most things. The simmering tension they often navigated was the background radiation of their lives, the knowledge that their presence in certain spaces could be questioned, their legitimacy challenged. Michael's strategy was usually quiet competence, letting results speak for themselves, using the system to his advantage. Nina focused on building bridges and fostering understanding through their foundation. They believed in working within the structures of power, changing them from the inside where possible. They'd never faced anything quite as blatant, as publicly demeaning, as a direct refusal of service based on flimsy, transparently biased reasoning. The carefully constructed world of logic, status, and procedure Michael inhabited felt suddenly fragile, threatened by raw, irrational prejudice at gate C-27. The transition from the smooth, anonymous efficiency of airport check-in and security screening to the hostile bottleneck at the gate was jarring. One moment, they were navigating the familiar rituals of travel. The next, they were targets. Sarah Coleman's refusal to even look at their tickets, her immediate leap to accusation and threat, shifted the atmosphere instantly. This wasn't a simple ticketing error. Michael felt a cold anger rise, but years of navigating boardrooms and tense negotiations had taught him the value of control. Losing his temper would only play into the narrative Sarah seemed determined to construct. He kept his voice steady, his stance non-threatening, but firm. "Ma'am, I insist you scan these tickets or call your supervisor immediately. We are confirmed passengers." Nina stepped forward slightly, her voice calm but carrying authority. "We understand boarding can be stressful, but there's no need for accusations. Please, just verify our tickets. We don't want to cause any delay." She tried to make eye contact, seeking a flicker of reason in Sarah's eyes, but found only brittle hostility. It was Sarah's reaction to Nina that truly solidified the malicious intent. She smirked, a dismissive, ugly expression. "Oh, I'm not the one causing the delay, and I don't need to verify anything. I know who's supposed to be in 1A, B, and C, and it isn't you." She gestured vaguely towards the back of the growing line. "Wait over there. If there are seats left after everyone else boards, we'll see." Then came the chilling escalation. Without further discussion, Sarah reached for the radio on her shoulder. "Gate C-27 needing security assistance. Attempted unauthorized boarding for first class." Her voice was loud now, pitched to carry, performing for the audience of waiting passengers. Heads turned. Whispers erupted. Jada shrank back, her face flushed with humiliation. She fumbled slightly with the phone in her hoodie pocket, her fingers finding the familiar buttons, a habit ingrained by her mother's oft-repeated advice. "If something feels wrong, Jada, document it." Quietly. She didn't know exactly why, but instinct told her this moment needed to be captured. She angled the phone subtly, pressing record, the small red icon blinking unseen in her pocket. Michael saw the security officers approaching, two uniformed DFW airport police, looking serious. The situation was spiraling rapidly. Sarah pointed dramatically at the Harris family. "These people are refusing to follow instructions. They're trying to force their way onto the plane without valid first-class tickets." One of the officers addressed Michael, his hand resting near his sidearm. "Sir, we need you and your family to step away from the gate area, please." Michael held up a hand, not in aggression, but as a signal to pause. Panic was useless. Anger was counterproductive. Logic had failed. It was time for leverage. "Officer, we are holding valid, paid first-class tickets for this flight," he stated clearly, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. "This flight attendant is refusing to verify them and is making false accusations, seemingly based on our appearance. Before this goes any further, I need to make one phone call." His initial goal had been simple: board the plane they were ticketed for. That goal was now secondary. The incident had transformed. It was no longer about seats. It was about dignity, about fighting blatant discrimination. His reaction wasn't fear, but a cold, calculated resolve. He wouldn't be intimidated, wouldn't be quietly shuffled away. He would use the tools he possessed. His first tentative step wasn't physical, but strategic. He reached into his jacket pocket, bypassing his wallet, and pulled out his sleek smartphone. The system Sarah represented had failed him. It was time to engage a different system entirely. The air crackled with tension. Passengers craned their necks, phones subtly raised, capturing the unfolding drama. The security officers hesitated, caught between the flight attendant's strident demands and Michael's unexpected, calm assertion. One officer looked skeptical. The other seemed more inclined to simply remove the disruption. "Sir, you need to come with us now," the skeptical one insisted, taking a step closer. "Just one call," Michael repeated, his gaze steady. He unlocked his phone, ignoring the murmurs rippling through the crowd and Sarah Coleman's triumphant smirk. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, accessing a secure contact list. He bypassed his office number, his personal contacts, and selected the direct line for Clara Evans. Clara was more than just the lead counsel for Harris Investments. She was a sharp, relentless litigator and a close family friend who had navigated complex corporate battles alongside Michael for years. She answered on the second ring. her voice crisp and professional. Michael? Everything all right? Clara, listen carefully. Michael kept his voice low but urgent, turning slightly away from the officers for a semblance of privacy. We're at DFW, Gate C-27, Skylux Flight 247 to San Francisco Airport. Lead attendant, Sarah Coleman, is refusing to let us board. First-class tickets confirmed. She's called security, making false claims. It's blatant profiling. He paused, taking a breath. You know my stake in Skylux. Give me CEO Thompson or VP Brooks immediately. Let them know their flight attendant is creating a major incident with a shareholder grounded in racial bias. Tell them Flight 247 isn't taking off until this is resolved. Clara, accustomed to Michael's penchant for understatement, grasped the severity immediately. There was no panic in her voice, only focused intensity. Consider dumb, Michael. Stay calm. Don't engage further. Let me handle the pressure from this end. Keep your phone on. The call ended. Michael pocketed his phone, meeting the gaze of the waiting officers. My legal counsel is contacting Skylux leadership now. This flight will likely be delayed. I suggest we wait for clarification from airline management. Sarah scoffed loudly. Legal counsel? Don't make me laugh. Trying to intimidate me won't work. Officers remove them. But Michael's call, the officers exchanged glances. Forcibly removing a well-dressed family claiming legal intervention felt riskier than dealing with typical disruptive passengers. We'll wait a few minutes, one officer conceded gruffly, gesturing for the Harises to step slightly further away from the jet bridge entrance, creating a small, isolated island of tension amidst the flow of boarding economy passengers who were now being allowed past them. The wait was agonizing. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Economy passengers filed past, some avoiding eye contact, others staring openly. Jada kept her head down, the phone still recording in her pocket, capturing the ambient noise, the occasional pitying or hostile whisper. Nina stood straight, her expression composed, but Michael could feel the tremors of anger running through the hand holding his. He squeezed it gently. Sarah Coleman paced near the podium, radiating impatience, occasionally shooting venomous looks towards them. She spoke into her radio again, likely complaining about the delay. Michael focused on staying outwardly calm, projecting an aura of control, even as his mind raced through potential outcomes. What if Clara couldn't reach anyone? What if the airline sided with their employee? The initial obstacle, Sarah's prejudice, had solidified into institutional inertia and the immediate threat of removal by security. The stakes had escalated from missing a flight to a public relations nightmare and a potential legal battle, all unfolding under the scrutinizing eyes of dozens of strangers. His first step, the phone call, was a gamble, a leveraging of power that might or might not pay off against the ingrained biases of the system he was challenging. Just as the last economy passengers disappeared down the jet bridge and the security officers began shifting impatiently, preparing to insist the Harises leave, a crackle came over the gate agent speaker system, followed by an announcement that cut through the terminal buzz. Attention passengers on Skylux Flight 247 to San Francisco. We apologize for the delay. Please remain in the gate area. The aircraft doors have been closed temporarily due to an operational issue. We will provide an update shortly. A collective groan went through the remaining passengers near the gate. Sarah Coleman froze, her jaw tightening. Michael exchanged a look with Nina, a silent acknowledgement that Clara had delivered. The pressure point had been found. Minutes later, the door connecting the gate area to the airport operations offices swung open. A woman in a sharp Skylux executive uniform strode purposefully towards the gate, flanked by two different security personnel, these ones wearing airline security badges. Not airport police, and a flustered-looking gate agent manager. The woman radiated authority. Her expression was grim. This was Diane Brooks, Skylux's Vice President of Customer Experience, a name Michael recognized from shareholder reports. Clara had evidently bypassed lower management and gone straight near the top. Diane Brooks ignored the waiting pass. She walked directly towards Michael. "Mr. Harris?" she asked, her voice strained but profound. "I am Diane Brooks, VP with Skylux. I want to offer my sincerest apologies for this unacceptable situation. Please, allow me to escort you and your family onto the aircraft immediately." Michael nodded curtly. "Thank you, MS. Brooks. But first, the issue with your lead flight attendant needs to be addressed." Diane turned to Sarah Coleman, her voice losing its professional warmth, replaced by ice. "MS. Coleman, I understand you refused boarding to Mr. Harris and his family, despite them holding confirmed first-class tickets." Sarah, suddenly pale, stammered, "MS. Brooks, there was confusion with the manifest. They didn't seem like." She trailed off, realizing the hole she was digging. "Didn't seem like what, MS? Coleman?" Diane pressed, her voice dangerously quiet. "Mr. Harris is not just a passenger. He is a significant shareholder in this airline. His tickets are valid. Your actions have delayed this flight, potentially violated company policy and federal regulations, and caused significant distress to our passengers." She gestured towards the jet bridge. "You will gather your belongings and disembark immediately. You are suspended pending a full investigation. Airline security will escort you." Sarah stared aghast. "Suspended? But I was just following procedure." Now, MS. Coleman." Diane cut her off, her tone final. The original airport police officers quietly melted back towards the terminal concourse, recognizing their role was over. Airline security stepped forward as Sarah, stumbling slightly, turned white-faced towards the jet bridge. The power dynamic had flipped completely. This was the turning point. The phone call hadn't just resolved the immediate issue. It had stopped the entire machinery of the flight, brought executive power crashing down onto the scene, and publicly vindicated the Harris family, while simultaneously removing the primary antagonist. Michael realized this was no longer just about correcting a wrong done to his family. It was about the exposure of a systemic failure within the airline he partly owned. They had moved from being reactive victims of discrimination to proactive agents forcing accountability. There was no going back to simply being passengers. The flight had been stopped, but the real journey uncovering the why behind Sarah's actions was just beginning. The point of no return had been crossed the moment Diane Brooks stepped through that door. Diane Brooks personally escorted the Harris family down the jet bridge and onto the plane, the silence from the already boarded first-class cabin thick with curiosity and unease. As they settled into their assigned seats, 1A, 1B, and 1C murmurs followed them. Michael nodded politely to the other passengers, his expression unreadable. Nina focused on ensuring Jada was comfortable, smoothing her hoodie, offering a reassuring smile. The immediate sense of relief was mixed with lingering anger and a profound sense of violation. MS. Brooks apologized again, profusely, offering complimentary amenities, assuring them the matter would be thoroughly investigated. Skylux does not tolerate discrimination of any kind, Mr. Harris. We will get to the bottom of this. She promised a direct follow-up. As she left to oversee the flight's now significantly delayed departure preparations, appointing a different flight attendant to manage the first-class cabin, the Harrises were left in the charged quiet of their seats. The initial victory fell hollow. Sarah Coleman was suspended, yes, but her blatant confidence, her reference to priority passengers, hinted at something more than isolated prejudice. Why had she been so certain she could deny them boarding with impunity? As the plane finally taxied towards the runway, Jada leaned towards her parents, pulling out her phone. "Mom, Dad," she whispered, her eyes wide. "I recorded it when she was arguing with you. And maybe something else." Michael and Nina exchanged surprised glances. "You recorded it?" Nina asked softly. Jada nodded, her fingers navigating the screen. "Mom always said to if things felt wrong. I turned it on when she started yelling about security." She found the audio file and hesitantly played a section, keeping the volume low. Sarah Coleman's sharp, accusing voice filled the small space around their seats. Then Jada scrolled further into the recording, to a moment after the main confrontation, but before Diane Brooks arrived, when Sarah had stepped away near the galley area, perhaps thinking she was out of earshot. The recording captured Sarah's voice, lowered but clear, speaking to another crew member. "Get rid of them. Langley needs those seats for the Stokes party. Said it's crucial for keeping the Platinum corporate account happy. Just find a reason, say their tickets are flagged, whatever. He said target passengers like that. They're less likely to make a fuss that sticks." Michael felt a chill despite the cabin's controlled temperature. Langley. Victor Langley. He vaguely recognized the name, a mid-level manager in crew scheduling or operations, someone whose name had perhaps crossed his desk in internal reports. Stokes party? Corporate account? Target passengers like that? This wasn't just Sarah. This was orchestrated. This was corruption, intertwined with calculated racism used as a tool. Just as this revelation sunk in, Michael's phone buzzed. It was Clara. She had boarded a later flight and was already en route to San Francisco, having anticipated needing to be there. Michael quickly filled her in on the recording. "Langley," Clara echoed thoughtfully. "Okay, Michael, this changes things. This isn't just personnel issue. It's potentially conspiracy, fraud, civil rights violations. Jada, that recording is crucial. Don't delete it. Don't share it. Send me a secure copy as soon as you land." The rest of the flight passed in a blur of hushed conversations between Michael, Nina, and Jada. The initial goal, getting justice for the humiliation at the gate, felt insufficient. They now had evidence pointing towards a deliberate scheme within Skylux, using racial profiling as a tactic to facilitate preferential treatment for wealthy, likely white clients. Who were the Stokes? What corporate account was so important? How deep did this go? Upon landing in San Francisco and meeting Clara at the arrivals hall, the regrouping began in earnest. They checked into their hotel, not as tourists, but as strategists. Clara immediately began working her legal network, initiating digital forensics requests through proper channels, focusing on Victor Langley's communications and Skylux's internal seat allocation protocols. Nina comforted Jada, reassuring her bravery in capturing the recording, while also grappling with the calculated cruelty of the scheme. Michael, drawing on his business acumen, started analyzing the potential leverage points. Divesting his shares was an option, but perhaps more powerful was demanding internal change, using his position as a shareholder to force transparency. Their new plan began to form. It wasn't just about Sarah Coleman anymore. They needed to expose Victor Langley and the entire corrupt system he represented. They needed irrefutable proof, and they needed to decide how to use it: a quiet legal settlement or a public confrontation that could force wider change but also invite intense scrutiny and potential backlash. The revelation on the plane, courtesy of Jada's quick thinking, had transformed their reaction into a determined campaign for systemic accountability. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of controlled fury and meticulous planning, operating out of a suite in their San Francisco hotel, that now resembled a legal war room. Clara Evans proved her reputation was well-earned. Leveraging Michael's shareholder status and the clear evidence of wrongdoing from Jada's recording, she filed emergency motions demanding expedited discovery of Skylux's internal communications, specifically targeting Victor Langley and Gate C-27 operations for the day of the incident. Simultaneously, whispers about the flight delay and the removal of the lead attendant had begun circulating within Skylux. Clara received an anonymous email, likely from a disgruntled employee aware of Langley's dealings, pointing toward specific discrepancies in maintenance logs for aircraft frequently used on routes favored by Langley's preferred clients. The email alleged funds earmarked for routine safety checks were being diverted or improperly accounted for, possibly with Langley's knowledge or involvement, perhaps to cover costs associated with his seat-swapping scheme or other illicit activities. This added a terrifying new dimension. The corruption wasn't just about preferential treatment. It potentially compromised passenger safety. The discovery process, expedited by judicial order thanks to the gravity of the civil rights and potential safety allegations, yielded gold. Clara's team unearthed a chain of emails between Victor Langley and several flight attendants, including Sarah Coleman. The instructions were chillingly clear: prioritize platinum-level requests, especially Stokes Group. If necessary, bump non-revs or select passengers unlikely to cause significant blowback. For removal, look for non-Caucasian passengers in premium cabins booked on discounts or miles, less likely to have corporate backing for complaints. Use standard procedure codes for involuntary denial, manifest error, security concern, etc. Keep it clean. Another email explicitly mentioned diverting budget from non-essential airframe checks to customer relations enhancements, a vague term likely masking the cost of a scheme. They now had the motive, catering to wealthy clients, likely involving kickbacks or career advancement. The method, using racial profiling as the selection criteria for bumping passengers, and the chilling confirmation of potential safety compromises. They also had Sarah Coleman's recorded words confirming she acted on Langley's instructions regarding the Stokes party. Michael, Nina, and Clara huddled, weighing their options. Skylux, through Diane Brooks, had reached out, offering a private, substantial settlement, a formal apology, and assurances of internal disciplinary action against Langley. They wanted this contained, quietly resolved. But Michael looked at Nina, then at Jada, who had listened intently to the lawyers discussing the emails, her initial fear replaced by a quiet resolve. A settlement felt like accepting hush money. It wouldn't address the systemic rot, the calculated use of racism, or the potential danger to other passengers. It wouldn't honor the humiliation they endured, nor prevent it from happening to others. No, Michael said firmly, this isn't just about us. What Langley did, what Sarah Coleman did, it's built on the assumption that people who look like us will stay silent. They're easy targets. And a safety issue, we can't ignore that. Nina nodded agreement. If we stay silent, we become complicit. We have the proof, Michael. We have to use it. Jada added, her voice surprisingly steady. He told her to target people like us because we wouldn't complain. I want everyone to hear what they did. The decision was made. They would refuse the settlement. They would go public. Clara began drafting statements and contacting select media outlets known for investigative journalism, arranging a press conference at the San Francisco Airport Hotel for the following morning. The risk was significant. Skylux could unleash its legal and PR armies, attempt to discredit them, bury them in litigation. This was the dark night of the soul, moment choosing the harder path, the one fraught with potential conflict because it was the only one that felt morally right. They spent the evening preparing, reviewing the evidence, anticipating hostile questions, steeling themselves for the confrontation. They weren't just fighting for their family's dignity anymore. They were fighting for accountability on a national stage, armed with emails, a secret recording, and the conviction that silence was not an option. The hotel conference room buzzed with energy the next morning. Cameras flashed, reporters jostled for position, and a handful of Skylux executives, including a stone-faced Diane Brooks, stood grimly at the back. Michael, Nina, Jada, and Clara took their places at the podium. Michael began, his voice calm, but resonating with controlled anger. He recounted the events at Gate C-27, describing Sarah Coleman's actions not as an isolated incident, but as the visible edge of something far more insidious. "We were targeted," Michael stated, his eyes sweeping the room, "not because of any issue with our tickets, but because of the color of our skin. We were deemed expendable, presumed less likely to effectively complain, according to the directives of Skylux management." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Then he nodded to Clara. She signaled in technician, and Jada's recording filled the room, Sarah Coleman's voice, sharp and dismissive, followed by the damning snippet of her conversation near the galley. "Langley needs those seats for the Stokes party target passengers like that. They're less likely to make a fuss that sticks." A collective gasp went through the room. Clara then presented copies of Victor Langley's emails, projected onto screens for all to see the explicit instructions to profile and bump minority passengers, the references to keeping powerful clients happy, the vague mention of budget diversions. "This wasn't just poor customer service," Michael continued, his voice hardening. "This was calculated corporate policy, enabled by managers like Victor Langley, exploiting racial bias for profit. And it appears this corruption may extend to compromising passenger safety." He announced that Harris Investments was placing its significant Skylux holdings under immediate review for divestment and formally requesting a full investigation by the Federal Aviation Administration into the airline's safety protocols and maintenance records. Nina spoke next, her voice trembling slightly but firm. "What happened to us was degrading. But we're speaking out today, not just for ourselves, but for every person who has been treated as less than, judged by their appearance, denied basic dignity." Finally, Jada stepped closer to the microphone, holding up her phone. "I recorded this because what she said, how she treated us, it was wrong. Everyone should know." The room erupted in questions. Diane Brooks stepped forward, looking shaken, and announced the immediate termination of Victor Langley and pledged full cooperation with all investigations. But the narrative was already out of Skylux's control. Harris Family Justice began trending within minutes. The climax wasn't a physical confrontation, but a devastating exposure, meticulously executed, leaving the airline scrambling in the face of undeniable evidence. The fallout was swift and decisive. Sarah Coleman, facing Jada's recording and Langley's emails, pleaded guilty to charges related to fraud and conspiracy to violate civil rights, receiving a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony against Langley. Victor Langley was fired immediately after the press conference and later indicted on multiple federal charges, including wire fraud, conspiracy, and violations of airline safety regulations, ultimately receiving a significant prison sentence. The FAA launched a comprehensive audit of Skylux's operations and maintenance procedures, leading to hefty fines and mandated corrective actions. Skylux stock plummeted, and the airline embarked on a massive public overhaul of its policies, instituting mandatory anti-bias training programs developed with input from civil rights organizations, retaining Clara Evans as an external consultant to oversee compliance. The Harris family returned home, not unscathed, but stronger. The public scrutiny was intense, but overwhelmingly supportive. They had faced down corporate power and systemic racism and forced tangible change. Michael, true to his word during the initial fallout, didn't fully divest, but used his shareholder leverage to ensure reforms were deep and lasting. Inspired by the outpouring of stories from others who had faced similar discrimination, Michael and Nina launched the Harris Unity Fund through their foundation. The fund provided legal aid, travel assistance, and advocacy for minority families encountering discrimination in the travel industry. It also funded STEM scholarships, particularly for young women of color, honoring Jada's quiet courage and technical aptitude that had been so crucial. Months later, the Harris family boarded another Skylux flight. The atmosphere was different. The flight crew seemed more attentive, more diverse, more aware. As they settled into their seats, upgraded voluntarily by the airline, a gesture Michael accepted with a wry nod, Jada looked out the window, then turned to her mother. "They tried to keep us off the plane, Mom." Nina smiled, putting an arm around her daughter. "They did, baby. But your father made sure the whole world saw us fly." Michael, overhearing, reached across to squeeze Jada's hand. "You were the spark, Jada. Your mother provided the calm skies, and Clara," he nodded towards their friend and lawyer seated across the aisle, who had joined them for this symbolic trip, "made sure we had the flight plan for justice." It wasn't just their seats they had reclaimed. They had recalibrated a small piece of the world, proving that courage, intelligence, and refusing to be silenced could, indeed, change everything.